Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends. It gives me pleasure on this August evening to say a few words about the priceless artistic heritage left by Jayantha Premachandra, whose legacy knew no cultural, political, geographical, or religious boundaries. His art was quite simply universal. When Jayantha Premachandra, Janaka Basurya, Shanaka Amalsingha, and the members of the organizing committee of this event invited me to address the gathering in the company of the eminent artist and scholar Dr. Jagat Ravindra, I accepted the invitation as a humble token of my friendship to Jayantha, whom I had met personally twice in Paris 2 years before his ultimate death in 1988. During his short life, he traveled to various countries and learned modes of different schools of art in Sri Lanka, particularly with regard to his childhood, in the Soviet Union as a young artist, in France, Netherlands, Finland, and many other European countries as a mature artist, and in India as an artist in search of his own style, inspired by Vishwabharati Shantiniketan that gave shape to culture-specific modernism initiated by Rabindranath Tagore and continued by the commitment and wisdom of Nandadal Bose and their contemporaries. Jayantha Premachandra was undoubtedly inspired by their art, but he translated them into his own style. His early paintings, very much inspired by Soviet style, characterized by Soviet realism and Soviet impressionism, evolved radically during his stay in France in 1984 to 1988, where he was recognized as a professional artist at the Maison des Artistes with a special visa. An admirer of Pablo Picasso, his paintings on canvas show the impact of blue period characterized by essentially monochromatic paintings in shade of blue and blue-green. I imagine him strolling through the narrow streets of Montmartre among the painters in the galleries of Musée du Louvre, Guimet, Picasso, and Orangerie in Paris. Jayantha has been instrumental in giving a meaningful direction to humanism and universality in his contemporary social space. He kept the tradition alive through his visual experience, his fresh eye, and his openness to experimentation. It is not possible to talk about his art in 20 minutes assigned to each of us, but I will do justice by selecting two of the many themes he had developed in his career, namely religious and mythological expression. The first painting I selected depicts the Hindu god Krishna, seated holding a bow and a quiver on the back. He looks contemplative. At top left, a procession of couples pass beneath him against a cloudy background. The use of color and Krishna's attitude are reminiscent of Nandadal Bose Shantiniketan paintings, particularly the one depicting Shiva drinking wall poison. The couples are more or less the same as those in the first paintings in Sri Lanka. Jayantha knew the story of this masterpiece, I guess. Next. The Bhagavad Purana narrates that when Krishna performs Rasakrida, the circle dance with gopis in which he uses his divine Maya to retaliate. He dances between all the gopis in the circle. It is also said, after creating as many of his as there were female cowherds, the Lord, who in reality took pleasure only in himself, amused himself with them. Next. Why then is he sad, in a sad mood amid black clouds? Did Jayantha know about the war between Krishna who helped Agni burned the Kandava forest, and Indra, who sent torrential rain to extinguish the fire, recounted in the epic Mahabharata. Thanks to Arjuna's Gandiva bow and Krishna's Chakrayuda, Indra's army was defeated and the entire forest with all its animals was burnt. Next, the dark clouds may represent the burnt forest. It looks that Jayantha turns Krishna into a humanist who regrets his destructive act. Next. The next painting I chose depicts the cosmic dance of Shiva, which is there, known as Shiva Nataraja, which embodies the cyclic nature of time of creation, reflecting Shiva's role as destroyer, preserver, and regenerator of the universe. Next. Browse in the galleries of Museum in Paris, Polonnaruwa, or Colombo. These Chola bronzes must have attracted his attention, not only for their beauty, but also for the divine nature of the multi-handed Hindu god. Jayantha Premachandra remains faithful to a certain extent when capturing the synchronized movement of 8 hands, holding Shiva's traditional attributes, Nagavasuki, Damru, two-headed drum, Parashu, battle axe, and deer and flame. Next. As it should be, Shiva dances on the body of Apasmara Purusha, the demon or the dove of ignorance. Next. Jayantha introduced a radical change by having Shiva dance with a body sway that reminds us of the corporal movements of Kandyan dancers. Next. He goes further, representing 2 sons of Shiva, Ganesha, the Deva of intellect and wisdom, and Skanda Kartikeya, Deva Senapati, chief of the divine army, on his vehicle, the peacock. These 2 gods and the deer to our right are not represented in Chola bronzes. A few stone reliefs of the Chola period, yes, depicts Shiva's 2 sons. Among them, I may mention the depiction of Shiva dancing with his 2 sons, each riding his respective vehicle, mouse for Ganesh, and the peacock for Skanda Kartikeya, watching him carved on a wall in Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple in Tamil Nadu, built by Rajaraja I between 103 and 110 CE. Next. In addition to all these features, what makes this painting unique is the shadowy depiction of 2 women admiring his cosmic dance. I have to confess, I painted them, right, with the power shop. Their lips are pointed towards the God's face, as if to embrace him. I assume you that no painting, engraving, or sculpture representing this component is attested in Indian art. Next. Premachandra must have observed the old woman depicted on the base of the bronze and stone sculptures of Shiva dancing and playing cymbals. She is Karaikal Ammayar, a woman from the merchant community, a Vaishya, who lived in the city of Karaikal in the 6th century. She is one of the 63 saints of Shiva from Tamil Nadu. When young and beautiful Panivati beseeched Shiva to divest her of burden of flesh and ask only that she watch him dance into eternity, a miracle occurred. In place of a young woman, there stood an emaciated hag, known henceforth as Mother of Karaikal or Karaikal Ammayar. Next. We can assume that it is this emaciated hag is depicted twice on either side of Shiva, whose youth and beauty have been rendered by the artist by adding a touch of humanism. Jayantha was fascinated by god Katharagama, considered to be one of the guardian deities of Sri Lanka. The god Katharagama is not the same as the one who was worshipped in northern India, particularly in Gandhara in Pakistan today, under the name of Skanda Kartikeya or Deva Senapati, leader of the divine army, who is seen wearing a cataphractus, a heavy suit of armor. According to some legends, before moving to Katharagama in Sri Lanka, the god lived on mountain Kailash in the Himalaya and had a divine concert called Tevanni. After settling in Katharagama, he fell in love with Valli, a beautiful princess who had been raised by the indigenous Vedas. Valli later became the second wife of god Katharagama and was transformed into a deity. In South India and Sri Lanka, we are used to images of the god armed with 6 heads and 12 arms, riding his vehicle, the peacock, accompanied by his 2 wives seated on either side. In the 2 paintings of Jayantha that I have selected, both are here, the god riding the peacock is shown also holding the his attributes, but the 2 wives are placed to the side of the god or behind him or on either side, not on either side. Usually, Tevanni, the god's first wife, should be jealous when during the Esala Perahara, the god Katharagama visits Valli Amman's temple every night. The goddess Tevanni is clearly not happy about this night-time rendezvous with Valli. However, in Jayantha's paintings, these 2 women seem to be enjoying their love for each other in their own way, ignoring the presence of their husband god. In second tableau, the 2 women engage in a frenetic dance, kiss on the lips, behind their husband's back. With a touch of feminism, artist does justice to both women. Therein lies the originality of Jayantha Premachandra, universality and humanity. The same type of staging can be found in his work depicting Bodhisattva, Gautama, before becoming the Buddha, tempted by Mara's 3 daughters and by Rati, Mara's wife. The Bodhisattva is shown emaciated after 6 years of mortification, Dushkarakriya. Compared with many paintings from Kandyan period that Jagat evoked, the Blessed One is depicted in Jayantha's image as a human being who had suffered severe austerities for 6 years. Instead of Mara and his ugly demoniac sons attacking the Bodhisattva with weapons, Jayantha's paintings show nude Rati, the wife, and the 3 daughters of Mara trying to seduce him in a swaying dance. In Asian art, the nude is everywhere. Found in religious contexts such as Salabanjika, meaning breaking the branch of Sala tree, as in the stupas of Sanchi and Bharut, the most ancient stupas in the world. Next, and Muksha Devata, a tree deity. Next, O Mahamaya, going to the garden of Lumbini to give birth to her son, the future Buddha, found in 1986 at Jetwanarama Bodhigara, the Bodhi shrine in Anuradhapura. In a Puritan context, the power of women's nudity seems to lead to agitation and agony. And we see this in one of his other paintings where the brain is overpowered by frenzied naked women. As in most of Jayantha's paintings we have seen so far, and many others, nudity becomes a powerful driving force. The kiss of the artistic heritage, his artistic heritage is a bliss. Jayantha Premachandra's black and white batik drawing, Beauty Under the Sea, is remarkable. Inspired by Greek paintings, batik design goes beyond the limits to express the freedom and unrestricted movement that humans can experience in deep water. If you are a diver, you know what I mean. 2 young women and 3 teenagers swim between fish, aquatic plants, and also move in a rhythm of women who oscillate. In the ancient and Greek-Roman world, swimming becomes an important cultural identifier of a social marker. The fabulous fresco of dolphins, a Minoan painting dating from the 2nd millennium BCE, is a fascinating masterpiece that accurately depicts the natural world without any human presence. It is a marine scene depicting a school of dolphins composed symmetrically with fish in the gaps and groups of sponges on the periphery. The archaeological site of Ostia, close to Rome, claims magnificent frescoes and impressive mosaics, including the mosaic of Neptune on his chariot, surrounded by dolphins and sea monsters. The celebrated Greek painter Maria Philippou, who studied in Paris at the École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts between 1984 and 1988, like Jayantha, was a contemporary of Jayantha Premachandra. She has produced a series of paintings entitled To the Light and Underwater Swimmers using vibrant colors. These paintings are particularly striking because of the combined use of bright yellows, greens, and blue and multi-directional lines on the seabed, which creates a sense of energy in the painting. In one of her interviews, she says, I quote, "I paint by observing the visible and presenting my own reality the way I see the world. I insist on working on canvas because despite the two dimensions, it allows me to express myself. It thrills me to create a three-dimensional image on a two-dimensional support. That is the magic of painting. When I paint, I lose myself in the journey of the process, during which paths and ideas emerge I had not imagined before. It is this self-awareness that sustains my passion for paintings." Quotation ends. This is how Jayantha Premachandra would have felt when he was painting the batik. The last painting I would like to discuss now, Adam and Eve, is the most fascinating. Jayantha's friend, Alan Lightman, has rightly observed in the book, I quote, "Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden beautifully and powerfully unites the cultures of the world, the Christian story of creation and the Asian Sri Lankan representation of harmony and love." Quotation ends. Mascaccio's expulsion of the Garden of Eden, painted on the walls of Cappella dei Brancacci in the Church of Santa Maria del Carmine in Florence, depicts the distressed Adam and Eve driven from the garden by the threatened angel. Adam covers his face completely to express his shame, while Eve's shame forces her to cover certain part of her body. Ghirlandaio also imitated several of Mascaccio's drawings. This influence is particularly evident in Michelangelo's The Fall of Man and the Expulsion from the Garden of Eden on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican. There are many possible sources of inspiration Mascaccio's may have drawn from. For Adam, possible references include numerous sculptures of Marsyas, who was depicted by Apollo in the Greek mythology, certain crucifixes by Donatello. For Eve, the art analysis usually point to different versions of Venus Podica, the pudic Venus, such as Prudence by Giovanni Pisano. However, the sin committed by Adam and Eve by eating the forbidden apple is considered as lapsus humani generis, the fall of humanity. What do we see in this most evocative of Jayantha's paintings? With these characteristic fluid lines, our artist paints Adam in burnt sienna and Eve in multiple shades of blue, passionately embracing and holding the legendary apple in their left hands in a shimmering dance movement. The white color snake wraps two loops around the two bodies, forming a serpentine constriction. Jayantha Premachandra sees an endless love and passion between the two. Love, sensuality, sexual and physical feelings and desires, with or without spiritual component, were an integral part of Buddhist art, as evidenced by Mithuna and Naga couples sculpted in the Ushnisha or the coping stones on the balustrade of the stupas of Nagarjunakonda in South India. Like George Keat, before him, Jayantha may have been inspired by ancient Indian arts. As I said earlier, in Jayantha's painting, a kiss is a bliss. This bliss leads to desire and love. Mortal sin then becomes a desire for sensuality. The couple seems to be enjoying their forbidden love. Shadows of burnt sienna and the shady blue encircle the couple as if multiplying in an endless stream. Jayantha sees creation as force for the surpassing frontiers and taboos. Like the Mithuna couples, considered to be auspicious, Adam and Eve are associated in their paintings with fertility, prosperity, and the creative nature of the universe. This is his universality, this is his humanism. By way of conclusion, let me emphasize that the creativity of Jayantha Premachandra's artwork is an important marker of contemporary Sri Lankan art. Lionel Wendt, a central figure on the mid-20th century art scene, pioneered a movement that gave rise to what is now considered modern and contemporary art, both visual and scenic. George Keat, often regarded as one of Sri Lanka's most eminent modern painters, drew much of his inspiration from Cubism and from Henri Matisse. He was one of the founding members of the Colombo 43 group of Sri Lankan artists. Our artist, Jayantha Premachandra, was living in France when postmodernism came to designate a general and generally festive response to cultural pluralism. Its advocates aligned themselves with feminism, multiculturalism, and post-colonialism. I am sure that Jayantha, like me, sat in the lecture theatres of Collège de France. I was very fortunate to know all of them, listening to Michel Foucault, who introduced a political concern with social power relations into discussions and postmodernism. Foucault died in 1984 and Jayantha in 1988. If Jayantha were with us today, we would see how he would have developed his art beyond modernism and expressionism. I was expecting some of our artists, but they are not here. But Sri Lankan artists present, announced here, like Jagat Veerasinghe, Chandragupta Tenuwara, and our keynote speaker, Jagat Ravindra, have brought Sri Lankan art into an era, para-modernism, and have actually and effectively brought to surface issues relating to the impact of war, social, political, and economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Jayantha Premachandra, with his exceptional art, has bridged the gap between the 43 group of Sri Lankan artists and today's para-modernist artists. His humanism, universality are reflected in all his work. For me, he was a genius who set milestones in Sri Lankan and universal art. We will always remember you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Professor Bopearachchi. That was an exhaustive exposition of the religious and mythological themes in Jayantha Premachandra's art.